So growing up, I was daddy's little girl. My dad worked at a pharmacy. Actually, he owned a pharmacy, and he'd get home late every night, and I'd go to sleep in his bed. And he would come and he'd wake me up, and he'd tell me a story, and he'd cuddle, and he'd put me back to sleep again. I love my dad. I loved him so much that whenever I got a tummy ache, he'd come and he'd pick me up, and I would puke right in the pocket of his shirt. And you would think it would be a fluke, but I did it about 5 times. So I'm definitely daddy's little girl. I marked him. My dad was cool and we could talk about everything. And as a little kid, you don't want your parents to talk down to you. And my dad would talk to me like an adult. And I appreciated that. So I grew up in the Adirondack Mountains of New York State. And I lived in this little town, and the little town was very nice. It was safe. They had good neighborhoods. I was able to ride my bike all over the place. My grandparents lived there. It was a perfect place to grow up, but it also made me extremely sheltered. So as a little kid, I was about as innocent as you could get and about as lily white as you could get. So in 1980, when I turned 13, or just before I turned 13, my dad said, "Hey, I got a job in central New Jersey and we're going to move." So my parents, in all their wisdom, decided that the best time to move was the weekend of my bar mitzvah. So I had services on Friday night, I had my bar mitzvah on Saturday morning, had a little party Saturday afternoon, and moved to New Jersey on Sunday. Yeah, I'm still in therapy for that. But where I moved in New Jersey, it was a bedroom community for New York City. So people worked in New York, lived in New Jersey. And the kids my age were about, I don't know, 20 years more mature than I was. They swore, some of them smoked, they knew a lot about sex. I felt like I had been picked up from Sesame Street, dropped in the middle of Times Square with no weapons, no street smarts, and was told, "Good luck, kid." And it was crazy. Now, around the time that we moved there in 1980, the Phillies were having a very good year. And I went to my first Phillies game. And I came back and I told my dad, "I love baseball. Can we go?" And he's like, "Sure." So in 1981, we started a tradition where we would go in April for my birthday and we would go in June for his birthday. And we called it birthday baseball. So if you do the math, we're coming up on 40 years of birthday baseball. So I was a bit of a rebellious teenager because, again, I had been brought from this lily white environment into the middle of the city and had this big rebellious streak. So my dad and I basically didn't really talk much during high school. I just screamed at him and he screamed back at me, and that was our relationship. But we still had birthday baseball. And I went to college, didn't have a lot of time for my dad, but we made time for birthday baseball. And I got a job and he was working, but still birthday baseball. And even in 1996, when I moved to Pennsylvania and he stayed in New Jersey, still had birthday baseball. Now in 1999, my world got shook up a little bit because my parents decided after 35 plus years of marriage that they were getting a divorce. Now, if you have ever been the adult child of divorced parents, you know that it can be kind of hell on earth because they tell you things that a child should never, ever hear from their parents or about their parents. So here I am, and I'm pissed at both my mom and my dad. But I guess one of the good things that came out of it is that, when my dad moved out from my mom, he got his own place, and we spent a lot of time together because he didn't know how to cook. I don't think he'd ever lived by himself before. So I had to teach him how to cook. We would hang out and go to movies. We would go to museums. It was great. We got to spend all this real quality time together. Unfortunately, it was very short-lived because he started dating. And when he started dating, he decided that, he was too busy to spend time with his kid. So our relationship got a little bit more distant. Then he got married and he had a new family and it got even more distant. And it just kind of started to fall apart. And I said to him, "Hey, if you want to spend time with me, you need to work on it." So he'd call every once in a while and we would talk on the phone, and he's like, "I promise I'll keep calling you." And then he would call maybe once or twice more, and then I wouldn't hear from him. And it got to the point where we basically stopped talking, except for birthday baseball. We kept that up. So it was really awkward going with my dad when we weren't talking and dealing with, the situation that was really awkward and strange. But we went and we did it. And it was nice because I knew that if I didn't see my dad all year, I get to see him at least 2 times, in April for my birthday, in June for his birthday. Now, as my dad's getting older, You know, he's starting to come to terms with his mortality, and he's gotten much better. So I would happy to say for the last, I don't know, year and a half or so, we've talked pretty much every Thursday for at least an hour. And like the old days, you know, my dad and I would be able to talk about everything, and we still talk about everything. So speaking of Thursdays, next Thursday, my dad turns 80. And guess what we're going to do for the big 8-0? Can you guess? Any thoughts? We're going to a baseball game. I'm not going to tell you about it just in case he sees this, because there's a lot more planned, but it's going to be a big surprise. So in 40 years, we only missed 2020 because of the pandemic. So to end my speech here, I would like to quote Terrence Mann from Field of Dreams, where he says that the one constant through all the years is baseball. And baseball has marked the time, and baseball has made me daddy's little girl again. Thank you.